All right, folks. So we had quite a few people show up today, which was really awesome. I really hope that we can get a few more people here to show up to our morning mastermind group. We had a lot of business owners that weighed in on specifically the social media strategies that we were talking about today. So hopefully look forward to seeing some more folks here in the near future. But I thought I would go ahead and record this presentation for posterity purposes and also just to let you guys know a little bit about what you're missing. So we went over social media strategy today. And generally, when I think about social media, I think that there's usually about three social media strategies in general that we kind of focus on as business owners. And one of those social media strategies is going to be market awareness, right? And that's usually where we're getting people to put us in the top three list of their names in their head when they need a solution to their problem. The other thing is going to be credibility, right? And that's building that expertise in the field and showing that we are the experts in whatever field that we're in, or that we are the best solution provider for whatever tangible good that we have. And then there's also direct response marketing. That's where we get people to buy from us immediately, right? So the first thing that we need to figure out is we need to figure out who our avatar is, right? So who are we trying to reach? And then we need to find the applicable social platform where these people are, right? So one of the cool things that I watched on a video not too long ago was this documentary called The Social Dilemma on Netflix. And one of the things that they said really struck home with me. And it was that if you aren't paying for the product, you are the product, right? And that made a lot of sense, especially when we talk about social media. When we go onto social media, if we're in there all the time, we're posting on it and we're utilizing it all the time, generally speaking, we're the person that they're trying to reach to, that the business owners are trying to reach to. So Facebook, this billion-dollar company, was spending a lot of money to try to create these groups of people and these types of people that people can market to. You are the product when you go onto Facebook. So it's very interesting when you think about it in those terms, right? And so we need to view it in the same term that we're trying to reach to folks who are the product in these specific social marketing platforms, right? So when we think about what kind of platforms they could be on, one of the first things that comes to mind for me, at least, being an accountant, is usually LinkedIn, right? And that's because LinkedIn is usually the best for B2B marketing, right? The big thing about LinkedIn is that it is a business professional network where everybody tells you exactly who they are, what they do, and all the posts are related to business, right? So the purpose is business. We get right down to brass tacks, and the purpose is business. They're selling interest in business and interest in certain industries, right? They're not selling interest in certain types of opinions or personalities and things like that, like Facebook is. They're selling specifically interest in business. So there you get directly to the topic at hand and you get right to business marketing. People are looking for vendors there. They're also looking to sell to folks there, right? So you get a little bit of both worlds, and it's great for B2B. It's great for networking. It's great for getting a job or recruiting folks. So that's what LinkedIn is. And then Facebook, Facebook is a personal network. It appeals to all types of folks, right? So it's not just business owners like LinkedIn is. It also has personal opinions and perspectives, et cetera. And the purpose is to connect with people with similar likes and opinions. If you look at how Facebook builds its algorithm and generally how people build their friend networks, is they build it with people who have like minds and opinions with them. We usually unfriend people who are not of the same opinion with us, and you'll see that overall. That's why we create these type of echo chambers that they talk about in Facebook, and that's where that comes about from. Is we create networks with people that we like, and we usually connect people that we connect with and have similar opinions with, right? There are subsections of Facebook that do deal with specific types of things, right? Like professional business matters, as well as so you can do direct to consumer and B2B there. So when I think about Facebook groups, for example, I'm a member of a couple different Facebook groups that focus or concentrate in accounting. We talk about similar problems that we face within the field and how other people have solved those particular problems, right? And so you can gain a lot of knowledge from other folks that are of like mind or in like industries. And that's what Facebook tries to do, is it tries to group us in these little lumps, right? Now, Instagram is great. It's image-based social media. So it's going to be focused on what kind of pictures people see that they stop and pause and look at and are interested by, right? And it appeals to all folks, just like Facebook, but it's really image based, right? And it's based off a system that follows. It's best for direct to consumer or image product based industries. And when I think about images, I think about places where your image is extremely important and how people view that image is extremely important. I think of things like fitness, cooking, and crafting, right? So the actual results of a project, some type of great delicious dish, right? Or say how to do a particular exercise or something like that, or just looking at idolization for people in the fitness industry or other realms of life. You're gonna look at that first because that's going to be where you see images, right? Twitter, like I said before, what I can say to everybody else here, I'm not really sure all that Twitter really does. I think generally it creates a topic in which people can kind of argue, disagree with, people of all different types, but it creates a centralized topic in which people can kind of weigh in on certain things, right? And it really depends on how you utilize it, but it's not the greatest for generating actual business. It's usually just a place where people can, it's great for customer response, is what I was hearing from other folks, is how you can hear, especially when people are displeased with your particular product or something like that, how you can address it easily and publicly. All right, so then we also have YouTube, and YouTube appeals to all folks. It's video based, right? So we need to make videos pretty much for YouTube, and it's very content focused. It's based off of subscriptions, and you can sell direct to consumers. You can sell B2D with YouTube, although B2B is a little bit more difficult with YouTube because you have to identify certain subjects, certain markets and everything like that. It's very content focused. So whatever you're doing, you need to be trying to deliver extra value with that particular video. And there's a couple other networks like TikTok and Reddit, which do exist. And I'm sure you're probably thinking maybe one or two here that I missed, but I would say that we covered the majority or some of the big guys here. So market awareness, when I talk about market awareness as a philosophy or strategy in marketing, that's where we talk about how folks may not be prepared to buy at this exact moment, but when they do, they're going to think about a few different names, right? And the more that we can generate that market awareness, the more likely we are to be in that top subset of names that they're going to choose from when they make a purchasing decision. When you think about how you make a purchasing decision, sometimes you're going to think about the top 3 people or top 3 brands which you're going to buy something at, right? So you want to be in that topic of conversation. You're creating market awareness when you are in that topic of conversation. I use, for example, the example of Nike. When we think about buying a shoe, we think of Nike, Reebok, maybe Walmart or something else, right? We try to think about what could be an off brand or something. But Nike, Reebok is going to be one of the first things that pops into our head because they've created that substantial market awareness to create that image that they're in the top 3 of people that you could name in that business. So that's usually it's also called branding, right? Now, when you're trying to post for market awareness, you're going to post to ensure that it's volume driven. So you need to be volume driven. You need to have a lot of posts. You need to be consistent, and you also want to be notable, right? So the object here is when you're going through the scroll feed, you want to see something that is going to make you remember this particular item, product, or business, right? So when you posting it through, I always think about the Yeti or the Sasquatch, right? When I think about the beef jerky, you're going to be more likely when you're at the store, when you think, I want some beef jerky, you're going to look at Slim Jim, right? That's another notable brand, but you're also going to think about the Sasquatch guy, right, on the commercial. So you're going to think about these different things, and that's going to be a driving factor in your purchase decision. And the reason why I think about that and I think about the Sasquatch is because the Sasquatch is notable, right? The Sasquatch creates that memorability when we think about market awareness. And the best way that you can do here, the best thing that you can do here to create this market awareness is to have posts that are creative and memorable. So you want to think about, how do I get them to stop through the feed and just take at least a moment to indelibly imprint my business on their mind. So you also want to make sure that they know exactly what your product is when you do these creative advertisements, right? So the other thing that we think about is we think about credibility when we're making posts or we have a social media strategy. And that is that we want to make sure that folks think that we are the established expert in the problem that you're solving, right? So that when the problem comes up to the client or customer, not only are you in the top 3 of people you thought, but you're the best in there because you've made the most posts about it. You seem to know the most about that specific industry and know the most about that problem, right? So you want to try to establish that credibility to where people can trust you to solve their problem for them, right? It's also called content marketing. It's basically when you make a post and you try to show that you're the expert in the industry because you keep contributing to the industry and keep contributing to those posts. The other thing too to think about credibility is if somebody's on the fence when they're thinking about purchasing from you, what is one thing that we do? We usually will go through and we'll start doing some research about them, and we'll go to their social media and we'll start looking through their posts and see what they're posting. And if we see enough posts in there, so if you go to like one of my Facebook pages, for example, you'll see there's like 300 posts, right? So that usually says a couple things about me. It says, number one, I'm interested in the industry and or market and interested in solving people's problems. Number two, I'm keeping it up, like as all business owners should be doing. I'm keeping up that at least that little subset so that people know that I care enough about my business to go out there and make sure that I'm making posts consistently. And number three, it brands me as an expert in that field, right? So we'll see that a lot with general blog posts in the industry that you're in. And posts that focus on solving consistent problems that your clients/customers face, right? So if we make a post trying to solve the top 3 things that our clients have the most problems with, that's going to be really effective for building our credibility because we can identify with those problems that somebody may be having at that exact moment and showing them how it can be solved or how somebody else has solved it. But one of the best ways to kind of build this credibility is with video, because you can create a lot of content marketing with video and you can solve a lot of problems with video, and people are starting to like video more and more than they are necessarily liking some of the handwritten posts. It's got more of a stop and watch factor. All right, another method or strategy with social media is going to be direct response marketing. And the principle behind direct response marketing is that you present a solution to the customer or client and get them to buy now, right? So you have to make sure that whatever you're doing is directed into a sale. Every single time that you make a post, it's about directing them to that next step, to the next step, to the next step, which eventually results in becoming a client and or customer. And that's what direct response really does, is it focuses on moving them along the steps to getting them engaged and getting them to purchase. At that exact moment, it's not about building awareness for a later purchase date. It's not about building credibility. You have to kind of build both of those into your direct response marketing in order to get them to purchase. And it always includes what we call a call to action, right? So that means, what's the next step? Somebody needs to be able to go on to the next step and move forward with you at each time. And it's one of the most effective methods of marketing because indirectly, it will both support the market awareness and the credibility factor when we make a purchasing decision, right? It ends up doing a little bit of both, because through that format of creating creating and enhancing the problem and identifying it psychologically as a high value problem, then identifying your solution, and that your solution is less costly than the problem is, right? So we go through that whole process there of the sale. Then you also have to in each one of those moments, you have to build that credibility. You have to build that market awareness as you go through that process, right? So you can do all these 3 things with a direct response marketing ad. It is one of the most difficult aspects of marketing because it involves several psychological principles. Like when we go through how somebody makes a purchasing decision, they usually have to know that the problem is costly. They have to be aware of the problem, first of all, know that the problem is costly. Then you have to show that there is a solution that is available to them. You have the solution, right? And that the value of the solution is less than the cost of the problem, right? So you have to go through all of that systematic psychological process in order to get somebody to understand that they have to take an action, right? And they have to part with a certain level of money. And the more money that they have to part with, the more you have to do in building that value and showing what that cost really is. And it can be very difficult to kind of build that structure that would allow somebody to part with $2,000, for example, as they go through a process struggle or understanding of the problem. So like I said, it usually involves creating a funnel, and I think his last name is Branson. He does like this thing called ClickFunnels, but he has a couple of books out on the subject of direct response marketing that's very good for understanding marketing in general, right? And why people make the purchasing decisions that they make. I would recommend that almost every single person, if they can do it, look into direct response marketing, look into copywriting, and look at how people have driven their own market in the past for whatever type of topic or subject or type of product that they may have. It's very good to know that and have that in your back pocket as an additional skill when you go through with your business. And so some helpful hints that I've learned through the marketing of my business and that I've learned from other business owners. First thing is, you don't need to write everything that you do, right? So you don't need to write every single blog post. So you don't need to write every single post that you have, right? There's these things called RSS feeds, right? So you can find a topic from CNN that's helpful in your industry. You have to post, say, what do you guys think of this, right? And try to get the people that are on your social network to engage with you, right? So you don't have to necessarily make all these posts, and you don't need to sit down and write, a million blog articles. You can also find industry content providers that will allow you to post more often. So these people that already have like pre-written blogs and or topics that you can utilize and make sure that you're posting on a more consistent basis. You can also commission folks to write things for you via Fiverr and Upwork, right? Those are two contracting websites. If you go through, you can find somebody that usually writes something industry specific to you, or can give you a bunch of posts on that specific industry, and you can make sure that you're posting this out. The other cool thing here is that you do not need to be involved with your social media posts on a daily basis. You don't need to be thinking, I need to make a social media post by 2 p.m. today. If not, I'm going to lose my consistency on this. You can utilize certain softwares like Hootsuite and Postfitty to schedule posts in advance and at certain times. For instance, we don't post anything from 1/1 to 4/15 because we're an accounting business and we have tax season between that time. What we do is in December, we try to map out all of our posts for the next 4 months so that we never have to worry about it, and they're always posting on time, right? We use these softwares to make sure that they're posting at specific time periods so that we can appeal to folks during specific time periods during the tax season when we just don't have the time for it. So one thing that we've noticed with social media is that direct outreach is way better than posting. It's way better than advertising, to be honest with you, in terms of how inexpensive it is. And it also gets a lot more results, right? So actually really reaching out to folks via social media is one of the best ways to actually get business owners, or I should say just anybody interested in your product. And usually you have to kind of format it. You have to kind of create what a normal conversation would be between folks in order to get that purchase decision made. But it is one of the best ways to kind of get somebody's attention and get them pulled into your sales funnel or sales process, right? So we use Meet Alfred and Friend Connector to make sure that we're adding folks onto our social media profiles and our websites, and then appealing to them directly on our product and or services. Right, it can be very, very easily done there, and you get somebody's attention when you have to make them say no, don't you? so that's one of the things that we use. Direct outreach is usually a lot better than any kind of what I would say indirect marketing or direct response marketing that's out there trying to get folks to catch a hint of what you're doing online through a social media post and then go through your funnel. So one thing that I want to recommend is using groups with social networking sites as often as you can, because people have already done the hard work of consolidating all your clients and our customers into some of these groups, right? So you can join some of these groups and then start connecting with folks that are in those groups that are good prospective clients and or customers. And you can use that. You can find some of these places and use that as much as possible. Then you can also take advantage of posting in certain groups. You always have to be very careful about what you're posting in certain groups, because you can get banned or something like that, right? People have rules. So you always want to make sure you read the rules and make sure that you're following in terms of what those rules are as best as you can either, because you don't want to get booted out for not obeying the rules, right? A lot of the times they just want you to be helpful with their group and not necessarily, they want you to provide solutions and not problems, if that makes sense, right? So we use Hip Dixon to help us like post and take care of stuff like that in a local market area. I'm sure that a lot of folks do as well. And Hip Dixon does allow us to advertise at least once a week, and that's usually pretty good for a lot of local businesses if they want to try to get in front of folks and let people know that they exist. One thing that people need to realize when they're doing all these social media things is that you're a business owner, right? And your profile should be professional and related to your business. The big thing here is when we look, especially the last few years, it's just been, I'm sure it's been crazy for everybody that's looking at this from an outside perspective, but you want to stay away from things that are divisive and things that could possibly alienate your customers or paint you in a bad light, right? So the less we are opinionated on social media, the better. I use one time I posted something and I was trying to be reasonable, etc., but somebody was trying to be unreasonable and took my post, put it on my business site, and tried to destroy my credibility through that, right? So you got to make sure that you understand everything that you say can be used against you, right? And it will be used against you, especially because you are a public figure now, especially because you live and die by how you interact with the public. So you really need to understand that. Now, there's some occasions where it might make sense to focus on that particular subset, and I always use the My Pillow guy as an example here because he really appealed to a particular subset of people, and he really stayed within that subset. I don't think honestly that he probably had that great of a pillow. I don't know. I don't own one, so there probably are a great pillow, but I will say that he really just focused more on the political aspect and that people should identify and purchase with him because of the political aspect, not necessarily so much of the product aspect, right? So that helped him in business, but I feel like it's also hurt him in the long run as he's gone through that process and dealing with everything there. So, as a business owner, better to just kind of stay as apolitical and as opinionated as possible, right? Let other people have the opinions, the people that are the product and not the producers. So your network, I think a lot of people make this mistake too. Your network can contain some friends and family, right? So yeah, we want to do some posts that are kind of family related, friends related, etc. You want to make sure that you're connecting with some folks via like say Facebook, for example, but you should view Facebook as a business profile first and foremost. And then your network that you make and that you're creating around you should be composed primarily of potential customers and consumers in your industry, right? It shouldn't necessarily be any average Joe Schmo that you meet. It needs to be people that are going to further your personal goals and further your personal life, right? And that you can be helpful to as well, right? So you want to make sure that you're connecting with people that you can be helpful to and that you can help further their professional goals. You don't want to be, the more that we get into this opinions and creating all this havoc and stuff like that, the more that is what we call a time waster, and it's not helping you get any further on your goals, right? So we need to focus on what is going to get us to the bottom line thing that is important to us, right? And what is going to help other people get to their bottom line thing that is important to them, right? Because in business, we're all just trying to help each other, right? We're all just trying to do, like, we sell products and services that are meant to help somebody solve a problem, right? And they want to purchase it because it is helping them solve a problem, right? So in reality, we are the most cooperative of all functions of life when we're trying to figure out a way to actually help people solve problems. And, it works both ways, right? So what we don't want to do is we don't want to create problems for other people and problems in other people's lives. So that can feed on you and it can be a negative thing for everybody, right? So we got to be very careful with how we're handling our social media presence at all times. So that's all I have for this presentation. Let me know if you guys have any questions or if there's anything that you guys want to add, go ahead and add it down there below in the subject section. And we really appreciate you. And we hope to see you next week at our appointed time. I think Tuesdays at 8 is what we're shooting for right now. So unless anything changes, that's when we hope to see you. And I hope you guys can come in. We can have a really good discussion about any of these particular topics. All right, thanks.